March the 31st, 2020. You're looking at the USGS earthquake map, guys, and we've had a very large earthquake in Idaho. Now, since I started the video, the second quake here has popped up, an aftershock of 4.8. And remember, just if we pull this in, you've got the fault lines pulled up here, but in Salt Lake City, our friends over in that area, Roy Potter and other folks, had a very powerful, I think it was a 5.7 with a lot of aftershocks, so this may continue. But this large quake, 6.5, it's saying 72 kilometers west of Chalice, Idaho, 10 kilometers deep, not very deep at all. And I'm going to pull in what's called the U.S. fault area, and we'll pull this up, and the U.S. hazard area. And what we're looking at is what they can basically map. You've got Salt Lake City here, and you can see as you go into these colorations, you're in a higher area of danger as far as an earthquake, from yellow to orange to red. Now, let me say this. If you look at Salt Lake City, which is in this area right here, and we had that quake. Now, it shows the fault line goes around Twin Falls, but actually, guys, if you look closely, it could very easily go straight through to this line in Idaho. Now, why would we have a quake this large, at this depth, this far inland? Let me say this. You guys remember the movie 2012? In the first 5 or 10 minutes, whatever period it was, when the scientists were coming on and they were trying to convince the president and other people that we were going to have major problems on the planet with earthquakes and whatever the earthquakes caused, the giant tsunamis, but it was the neutrino count from the sun. Remember that? And 2012, what they were talking about, that movie, they started making it back in 2010, and it was released before 2012 as a build-up to that point. But the neutrino count, which is the amount of solar radiation penetrating the Earth's shields during a solar minimum. And there wasn't a lot of talk about that in the scientific community as far as YouTube and people watching it. But again, it was the neutrino count, which was radiation penetrating the Earth's shields during a solar minimum. Now, if you look at our website, bpearthwatch.com, if you'll scroll down, there's been maybe 5 or 6 years now, a link called Space Weather. Click here. You'll see now that it's going to April 1st, 2020, Universal Time. They're talking about the next, a sunspot from the next solar cycle, and there's a small one there. Solar wind sparking the auroras. Something they've added. A couple of things, thermosphere climate index, which is very cold. But if you come down to the neutrino counts, or the neutron counts, today was 10.4, very high. 48-hour change was minus 0.4. Now, what was the maximum ever recorded since they started doing this? In 2009. And they were noticing it was very high as they were preparing the movie 2012. To be honest with you, they were letting us know. The maximum ever recorded as far as the percentage of the space age averages is what they're calling it. It was 11.7. Today it was 10.4. What in the lowest, now listen, 1991 was minus 32.1, or very low. Shields were very strong. But right now we're approaching the all-time high of 10.4. And as this heat builds up into the core of the Earth, guys, I've talked about it 4 or 5 years now, back during the days of CERN and with the penetration of the radiation via the Earth's shields into the core of the planet, heating the lava pools. And so that's what we're looking at. Again, you're not very far from the Yellowstone area. You're dealing with either Utah or Idaho. It's not that far compared to the size of that cauldron. Now, I don't know, I'm not saying that that thing could blow, but just the pressure on the lava pools. And then there's a phenomenon called a geothermal blast. That happened in the United States recently, and Crater Lake was formed from that. But You can have, instead of a volcanic explosion with smoke and ash and lava, you can have a lava pool under a large body of water that's underground, a giant aquifer or something like that, and heat that water into steam to where it explodes. And up in that area in Crater Lake and all the guys, they were getting earthquakes, landslides, hurricane force winds that were blowing and knocking cabins down and blowing them down the hill and trees down. Very geothermal explosion instead of a volcanic eruption. But when you start seeing the neutrino count build up, you start seeing the pressure on the planet, and you start seeing things happen, just like the geothermal release we're talking about. I think that, guys, was in the 59 or something. But you see the pressure build up in the cracks and the earthquakes. You also see lava movement. And we've been seeing this increase for the last 2 years, and I've been talking about this heating of the Earth's core because of it. And we saw the effects in California last year down near the Air Force Base in Southern California, just northeast of LA. Remember that? But now it's getting, again, let me pull this up just a little closer. If you look at it closely, you can see that we had a peak in neutron counts in 2009, getting the build-up of solar minimum. Then as the neutron count went down, we saw a great escalation in solar activity in 2015. Guys, we were getting X-flares and coronal mass ejections. Everything you could name was being thrown at us from the sun. And now that neutrino count is up again. But now we are at 10.4, again 11.7 is the highest ever recorded. So here we are, and I think that's what we're dealing with these large quakes. We're still in solar minimum. We saw one sunspot that they're thinking is coming from the next solar cycle because it's opposite polarity, and the sun will do that. Its polarity changes with the solar cycles, not like Earth's. So they can tell if, just simply if it's a minus plus polarity or plus minus polarity on how the gravitational or the magnetic poles of the sun have shifted. So what we're seeing now is, I think, very important. And it was talked about in this movie. Many people have talked about that the fact that many movies and books and all are ways of letting people know what might be coming. And we see folks going into Cheyenne Mountain, as in the video last night. But we're watching it, guys. And you guys in Idaho, keep an eye on this for the next 24, 48 hours. The aftershocks may not be over. It's a heads up. Be safe.